Hi, I'm Amy O'Donnell and welcome to month 9 of the Feathered Friends Quilt Along. This month is meant for the people who have decided to supersize their quilts by adding the beautiful Lemoyne Star final border to this already beautiful quilt. If you're supersizing, you will be adding a total of 40 6.5-inch Lemoyne Star blocks around the edge of your quilt. 20 of the blocks are going to be in the dark light medium combo, and the other 20 will be in the medium light combo. You are going to need some tools this month, just like every other month. You're going to need the Lemoyne Star ruler, and that is this little gadget right here. Here's what it looks like up against some white so you can see how it looks. These are the directions that come with the ruler, and these are excellent, excellent directions. They are very detailed and tell you exactly how to cut and how large to cut and everything. So if you have lost your directions to your Lemoyne Star ruler, you can go to the Studio 180 website and download another set of instructions and print. So it's always nice to keep these handy. And I have my rulers hanging on the wall, and I always just have this hanging right behind my ruler on the hook on the wall. So that's just a little tip. The other thing you're going to need is your 22-inch quilting ruler for cutting. You're going to need your turning cutting mat if you have one. That's this little gizmo right here, because these blocks, the components of the blocks and the blocks themselves need to be trimmed a few times in the process. So this will come in very handy to be able to turn them and make your trimming more efficient. You're going to need your blade saver thread cutter, because this is very chain piecing friendly, what we're doing. Your portable design board will be awesome for laying out your blocks and making sure that they're all pointed the right direction and so forth. The strip stick pressing aid is going to be great to press your seams open, because there are some places where we're going to want to press the seams open. And you're also just going to need your regular Tucker trimmer, the small one, which is just this to trim to 6.5 inches. So those are the specialty tools that you will need. And so let's go ahead and get started. Here's a photo of the quilt with the beautiful Lemoyne Star border that we're going to be adding. There are a quantity of 40 Lemoyne Star blocks scattered around the quilt. And you can see there are also some spacing bars between the sections of the blocks. And we've done these spacing bars before, so I'm not even going to review that this time. This is what the ruler looks like that we're going to be using. This is the Rapid Fire Lemoyne Star ruler from Studio 180 Designs. This is a Deb Tucker ruler, and it is genius the way it's designed, but you do have to be careful when you're reading the lines, and we're going to go over that in the video. This section of the video is going to talk about the cutting diagram. Out of your background fabric, you will need to cut a quantity of 28 3¼ strips, and these are width of fabric strips, so 28 of those. And you will need to cut a quantity of 8 6.5 by 9.5 spacing blocks. From each of your dark, medium, and light fabrics, you will need to cut 7 2-inch strips, width of fabric strips for each color. So that is 7 strips of the dark, 7 strips of the medium, 7 of the light medium, and 7 of the light. And these are 2-inch strips, and they are width of fabric strips. You want to pair up your fabrics as stated in the instructions, and you want to pair them up each that you're going to be putting together with a background strip, and you want to have that background strip 3¼ inches down, or 3¼ inches above the colored strip. So that, and I illustrate that here in this photo. It needs to be the background strip needs to extend 3¼ inches beyond the colored strip that you're using. You want to pair the dark with the light medium and the medium with the light. And those each get paired with background strips. And this is what it looks like when you lay them side by side. And now we want to lay them facing each other, and we've pressed the seams in the opposite direction like it says in your instructions. The seams should be pressed opposite each other so that they nest when you lay them together. Lay them with the colored sides against each other and the background fabrics against each other. And when you run your finger along that seam, you should feel that they're nested in there and they're tucked in tightly. And that's part of the key to your success on this, that they're tucked in together really nicely. Just run your finger along that seam. we want to put our 45-degree angle line along the bottom, along the background fabric of that nested together piece. So run that 45-degree angle right along that line. And then you want to lay your Lemoyne Star ruler on there so that the edge of the ruler is lined up with the seam line, and you'll know that you're in the correct position. And then you can remove your Lemoyne Star ruler and you can start cutting at a 45-degree angle. So you want to make your first cut, and that will be a scrap piece of fabric, and then you can make the remaining cuts. And you want to stop periodically and make sure that you're still at the correct angle, but that's how you want to do it. And you want to leave those pieces together after you cut them. But that 45-degree line should go right along that bottom edge. And here I've got a series of them that I have cut. And you can see this is how they look. It's clearly a 45-degree angle. Next, we want to cut off that top tip section. So you want to place the ruler on top of your strip so that a vertical marking is aligned with the seam stitches. And then the edge of the ruler is on top of the tip of the seam allowance, and you want to cut off those small triangles. And this is illustrated very well both in Sonia's instructions and also in the Studio 180 instructions. So you want to cut off these triangles, but don't throw them away because we're going to use them. That's the genius of this ruler. So you want to line it up and just cut it off and make sure that you're cutting straight along a line so we don't have any wonkiness going on, or minimize our wonkiness, right? Isn't that the goal? So this is what you end up with, is 4 pieces. You've got the 2 pieces that you trimmed, and then you've got the 2 triangles that you trimmed off. Now we're going to attach those triangles that we cut off the other ends. We're going to attach the long edges to the short edges of our strips. And we're going to press these seams opposite each other. So I think I'll show you that here in the next photo, how we press the seams. Yes, on the dark fabric, the seam is pressed out toward the triangle, and on the lighter fabric, it's pressed toward the fabric. And I don't think it really matters if you do the light toward the end, toward the triangle or toward the inside, but you have to just make sure they're opposite. The ones you're pairing need to be opposite. Then we're going to use our Lemoyne Star ruler to trim. And you want to line up the ruler on the edge, the 6-inch solid line marking. You want to line that up with the seam of each triangle, and you want to trim. And then you sew your triangles together with that center seam. And notice how those center seams will nest because they've been pressed in the opposite direction. And so this lends itself to chain piecing. And so I'm just going to show you how I did some chain piecing. And then you can see now how all the pieces will come together to form your Lemoyne Star. And when we sew them together, I'm just illustrating here that since we press the seams in the opposite direction, the seams are going to nest. And this is just another view of how those seams should nest together. So now we've got the 4 quadrants of our Lemoyne Star made, and we're going to sew them together. And you can see here that I have pressed the seams open where I joined my 2 triangles in each quadrant. I press my seams open using my strip stick. And I like to trim off those little dog ears that are in the center. It helps me to line things up more effectively and to get that crisp look that I want, if I can really see where I'm sewing and what I'm sewing. So I recommend trimming off those dog ears, but everybody has their own preference. And these seams also will be lined up because they're pressed open, and so you need to make sure that you've got them lined up to get your points right. I've got 2 of my quadrants stitched together, and now I'm ready to sew my 2 halves together to make my first Lemoyne Star block. To get my centers to line up perfectly, I oftentimes, and I did in this case, I will start my stitching of the 2 halves from the center. So I am starting with those blocks lined up perfectly, and I know they're going to be perfect because there's not going to be any movement as I'm stitching because I've anchored them in the center. So that's my tip for you too. And I'm also going to press those center seams open using my strip stick. And here's my Lemoyne Star block. It just needs to be trimmed using my Tucker trimmer. And this is what the back of my block looks like. So I've pressed my vertical and horizontal seams open, and I've also pressed my seams open that join my colors together. I'm laying my Tucker trimmer on top of the block, and I'm going to trim it down to 6.5 inches. And here are 2 completed blocks that I made. If you notice, the blue on one side, the blue's on the right in one and the left in the other. So it just depends on how you want to position your strips. But this is how you make the Lemoyne Star block that goes into the border. So the other parts of the quilt are relatively simple. It's all things you've done before. The skinny borders, if you choose to add more skinny borders, and I guess that is part of the instructions. So yes, the skinny borders and then the spacing blocks. So I think you've got the skill set you need to make this fabulous quilt and to make it all come together. So thank you so much for being on this feathered fringe journey. I think it's just been awesomely amazing. And we have got a great plan for you guys for next year. So if you come to the Feathered Friends Christmas party in December, you may get a little sneak peek of what's to come. So thanks again, everybody. And I have thoroughly enjoyed sharing my love of sewing with you guys. And I hope you all have a wonderful holiday season and a happy 2022. Thanks again.